Thank you very much for the introduction. So, yeah, also I would like to say thanks everyone to the volunteers, the organizers, and Focus for bringing PyData London back after like a 2 years break. So actually, I just said like in outside, I'm at lunch. I'm in basically my happy place, having like talk, meeting new random people without scheduling things. So I learned so much already, and it was really great to reconnect to the community. So I will be talking about lessons learned in the field when consulting and implementing data-driven projects and bringing AI into place in enterprises and small and medium-sized enterprises. And you probably don't know that, like the small and medium enterprises with like 500, 5,000 people, employees, they are like a backbone of the German economy. So we rarely have like really huge enterprises than compared to the US. So there, yeah. So we have like also big customers, like medium, small-sized customers, and I would like to share some lessons learned in the field, some practices. Of course, this is all a little biased on my experience. This is the best I can offer, but I hope I can bring some extra value to the table for everyone. So let me start off. Who has ever heard about the cooling house experiment? No one. Ooh. Okay, seems from the book this. I didn't find it in English translation. It's one of my favorite books. It's like the strategy of things going wrong about human logic and behavior. It's a book by Dietrich Dörner. He's a professor of theoretical psychology, and he examines human behavior when making decisions in complex situations. And I think this is basically the place we're in when we try to make change and innovation happen if there's more than 3, 4, 5 people involved, if it's more like an organization or a bigger team. So the cooling house experiment is basically the following. You are the manager of a supermarket. The automatically regulated temperature control is broken, and you cannot get it fixed until tomorrow. So basically you have to regulate it by hand, and you have to basically hit 4 degrees Celsius. And you have like these minus and plus buttons to regulate temperature. And yeah, that's it. It's like a simple task, and you basically have to hit exactly 4 degrees Celsius. And it's a computer simulation, so it's no food was wasted during the experiment. It was a computer simulation, and this is what actually happens. So when we try to to fix the temperature, humans tend to maximize cooling or heating, or turn off when you hit 4 degrees. And what can we learn about this from this? The temperature does not work like we expect. It's a complex problem. Like, this is basically how temperature behaves. It's not just like, oh, I'm 4 degrees, stop everything, and it stays. It's going into another direction. There's many factors, like the food, air, like there's so many factors involved. So basically, everybody was failing, totally failing, and actually it ended up participants basically said, this is not the experiment, this is about something totally different, you're fooling me. They were really getting angry, or they tried numbers, lucky numbers, even numbers, magic, and it was quite odd. So, and what can we learn from that? Because if you look at companies, companies are complex systems. There's management, there's the departments, there's the product owner, there's AI development, IT operations, and of course all the other departments like HR and blah, blah, blah. So, and everybody's talking to each other also for change and innovation. And I don't know about you, but if I'm at clients, I very often discover they talk all the time, and constantly plans are changing and shifting, but not necessarily for the better. So if you have experience like this, or try to learn what can be done better or what shouldn't be done, I hope you will enjoy this talk. I'm Alexander Hendorf. I'm partner and founder of a boutique consultancy, Königsweg. Königsweg, we're very dedicated to the community. We run PyData Frankfurt, PyData Southwest. We're a 5 years community sponsor of the PyCon.de in PyData Berlin. And this is basically, this is like the conference like we just had last year, a colleague of mine. We like hitting off after Corona in April again. And our motto is transform to work smarter. So we're not like maybe many other consultants, we're basically there to enable our clients. And our claim is the ingredients for innovation are strategy, means, skills, culture, and patience as well. And innovation is complex. So, and to solve complex, we basically need culture. You cannot make rules and regulate everything to, as a complex human system to work, you need to establish a culture. And who attended Tanya's keynote this morning? It was like, well, many, yes. So we learned this morning, I think it was a great keynote, and we learned a lot about like tech, social systems. And this is very similar here. It's basically the same problem. So, for example, like people start, okay, we need to innovate, let's do Scrum and change. So there's like a saying, change is constant, let's go work agile. And there's like, for example, one thing, teams and flat hierarchies. It's like an awesome concept. Everybody's immediately on the same page, flat hierarchies, accessible management. So the idea is everybody's working together, hybrid teams. We work agile, we use Scrum. We have retros to constantly improve working on the product, working together, and basically fixing all the things all the time, which sounds like a really good plan, doesn't it? Reality check says, I'm not saying it's a good concept, but you also need to know when to stop changing things, because there's a saying in Germany, or I think it's also the same in English, never change a running system. So, for example, there's retros every 3 weeks, and to be honest, throw an idea, ask engineers for a problem, and they will always throw your problems back. So and everybody in this needs to say, okay, I need to add some value, so I need to find something from the retro, so we can change and innovate because they need to report something back to other management. And my best advice is, hey, stop when everything goes smoothly. Just like stop changing things. If the team has found the rhythm, if everything's like working, it's just like fine, and just like enjoy everything is working on track. And of course, very underestimated is like how long change of human routines actually takes. You need like professionals also to help change. You need to give everybody time, because like many people are working in a company, we come in, they are there for like 10 years. They have established routines, they have established social networks, they have established behavior. So that's, for example, very often we team up with another consultancy, and they are actually psychologists, and they have a totally different angle on looking at things and also helping to qualify who is actually able to change, who is a good leader for the future, and what we are looking for flat and accessible and everything, and also they also can test it and basically bring also some evidence to the table and not just like good guesses. So yeah, so change needs time, it needs room to breathe, and of course it also needs discipline and reminders, because humans, we tend to fall back in in established routines, especially when we're busy, because when we're busy, we don't really think, we're not as mindful, we just need to get things done. And this is why this is actually way more work than everybody expects. And so one thing is, of course, change needs time, but change is constant, but also change is not a purpose in itself. So this is one part of culture, apart from open communication, transparency of decisions, contribution, like a healthy culture, like asking questions. So I always like, if clients ask me, what's like a healthy culture? Yeah, go to a PyData conference or any Python conference. The community has established there are no stupid questions. You can ask any questions. So, and this is really good, and this is what you should establish in your company as well. Also, I think we all know that, or most of you in the room will know that. How do you actually get AI into your company? Or let me rephrase the company, how to buy AI in 2022. So let me demonstrate like a totally different angle, like the more like management angle in many companies when they hear about AI. They read about AI in the newspapers, they read about startups, they do interviews, and everybody's, of course, exaggerating, so or having these good ideas. For example, like somebody threw like a newspaper from like one of the major German newspapers, Frankfurter Allgemeine, threw like, oh yeah, AI. Now there's like Beethoven's 10th Symphony. AI finished that. And what do you think about this? And I said, oh yeah, well, I'm really sorry, but we really have to deal with it. Beethoven is dead, and the 10th Symphony will never be finished. It's and for an example, because of course I like the idea, I like AI is trying this, so I think it's still a funny project, but it's not a serious project, because if you know a little about Beethoven, Beethoven's 9th Symphony is the only symphony having like the chorus was actually like the European hymn. So if we just trained AI with the first 8 symphonies, the 9th symphony would have never been like this magnificent, including the choir. So AI can just like, as you probably know, repeat what we have before in the data and not be really creative. But people are not aware of it. Of course, they need newspapers, they lead high levels, they read a lot of stuff. So recently I met an old friend at the train station, and she said, oh, I'm changing roles, I'm in management, on C-level, and she asked me, hey, what are you doing? And yeah, we founded a boutique consultancy, Königsweg, we do data and AI and innovation, and she just replied, oh yes, in my new position, I have to buy AI as well. And I said, and she's a great person, like, yeah, and I thought, I just like had this picture, how do you imagine to buy AI? Is it like cut, paste? So, of course, many people think it's just like another piece of software you can buy. So, and it's part of something you just order, yeah. So, but I say actually this is a big misperception because you cannot buy it. We have to build it, and many people are not aware it's not something you can buy. Of course, there are some AI services. Speech, translation, stuff. Hey, other people have solved it already. This is a commodity service, you don't need to build it yourself, but if you really want to make the most in your market or for your domain, you need custom AI, and you cannot buy custom AI anywhere. You basically have to build it, and you have to establish everything you need for building AI, which is culture, as already covered, data, AI-centric data at best. You need resources, skills, means, expertise, experience, and a plan to make it happen. Also, you need like to have the right way of thinking, like an end-to-end thinking. And this brings me to a technical example, because what we very often see, people build prototypes. You know, let's build AI. Somebody is there and let's do AI. Great. Very often working student, activist, GitHub, all this. So this brings me to the lighthouse problem. So what's the lighthouse problem? The lighthouse problem is there's a prototype in place, a proof of concept, driven by a single person or a group, which is just like very engaged. It's based on open source and blog posts, and it produces results in a very reasonable time and really fast, and stakeholders are impressed. So, if you just put yourself in the shoes of the stakeholders, how would you react? Oh, hello, Wunderkind. Great, we have AI basically solved. And here, hey, what about doing this? If this project, hey, this looks amazing, just more, do more. Yeah, great, I want to do more. And basically it ends up like adding more and more and more things, and nobody's basically aware it's working only on one machine, it's not production ready, it's probably not software like real good code and stuff, but everybody, and suddenly everything falls apart, and people wonder, hey, what had happened? Yeah, because like everybody's just like pushing for results. Like there's no test, there's no documentation. It's not scalable, it's not maintainable. Probably the person who built it left after like 3 months of doing an internship. Don't get me wrong, I love prototyping and proof of concepts, but it's very important when to stop and when to move forward and to take things seriously or just leave it as is. So what happens with code bases created like this? Recycle? Trash? Can we cure it? What's your guess? Huh? Right in the middle. Right in the middle, you say trash? Anybody in for recycling? Recycling? Oh, two. Who says you can cure it? On? Okay. Let me just show you a picture a colleague of mine drew after he did code review of one of these projects. Yes, he was just like collecting, and basically he was basically, I went insane. Like, there's so many things in there that don't make sense. They are also not contributing to the project. They are just like adding, okay, we always wanted to try something like this, but it's not really core value. And actually, yes, it ended up like this. It ended up in the trash. It was completely rebuilt. It was not worth to refactor. So, of course, the best practice is have good ideas, try it out, but know when to stop. Yeah, and know when you have to find allies and the resources to make it really happen. And also, my call to all other stakeholders, have patience and don't just walk by and be impressed on support with resources and backing of those projects. Of course, they can add extra value. So, yeah, so basically, lighthouses, it's not a strategy, it's just like a bunch of new silos. And everybody should be aware, like, data silos are one of the biggest problems in enterprises. There's so many data silos, nobody knows. So the question we ask is, do you have a strategy or just like a bunch of ideas? Because this brings me also like to the next question. Is going data-driven part of your corporate strategy? Or are you just like, want to try things out? So basically, if it's yes, continue talk. If you say no, it's not part of our long-term corporate strategy, I say, hey, no, bye-bye. Because you really need, nowadays you need to really have the strategy established, otherwise time is just like running. The world is not waiting for you, and many companies and most corporates have waited too long already. So, now what? So, of course, there's commodity services, specialists, but market leaders. As a market leader in your domain, you need to establish your own AI, machine learning, data-driven services. Very often, like 70% is analytics, getting the data in the right formats, offering analytics as well. This is all part of the process. And the first step to establish a common understanding is to see if everything aligns. Do you have a strategy? What's your long-term plan? And basically, what do you have in place? And very often, yeah, we did like a survey. We did like these lighthouses. We did AI already. And they say, no, this is not really how things should be accomplished. So basically, our approach is to ask, should data follow AI? So basically, we have this idea about AI. We always wanted to do something with natural language processing, for example, so people start to dig for data in the company to do that. So, and I think this is a questionable approach, because I strongly believe AI should follow data. So what's the process? Going data-driven is actually to have a data strategy, yeah? And this includes, first step, do a data dictionary. So basically go to all the company, the IT departments, people working with data, doing reports. You don't believe how many data just flies in with emails and Excel sheets, which is very valuable. And you basically have to take time and ask people, okay, what do you have? What do you work on? Because very often people forget the data, which is they work most on. They're just like so in their routines, they even realize it's data anymore. So this takes time. Take a data dictionary. Then qualify. Like, now we have the map. This is the data we have in place at the company. And then qualify which data is suitable. What do we need to do to access it? And basically do like a top 3, top 5 list, what is there. And based on that, in combination, okay, what's the domain, what's the business value, identify suitable AI technologies to work with. And of course, putting the value for the company first, so, or like expertise, whatever there is in place. And there's always like crazy a lot of things you find nobody's aware. Based on that, decide which infrastructure do we need? So of course, we don't know, go cloud first and then look for data and AI later. So of course also look, what do we have in place? What do we actually require? Of course, looks like really simple. Of course, everybody who works in the field knows this is like super complex. So, but our approach is, this is like one example reference architecture. We just show to our clients, say, okay, there's like all your data sources. And it can be basically anything, from machines, from your databases, from your SAP system, whatever. And you put it in a data lake. Oh, by the way, the data lake is just like a concept in mind. So it's not a real lake. You put all your data in and you get it out. So, and once you have data accessible in your data and you don't need to finish first filling up the lake, as soon as stuff there, we have a data hub, we have APIs with all the governance processes, and from there, oh, sorry, it's in German, but I think you can follow. So we can have the data accessible for just for statistics and analytics. We can run prediction models, and we can also just like have like classical BI tools connected to that for like stuff, because not everything needs AI there. So, but the main message is just not, it's not about the data lake, it's not about the data sets. This is basically, you need to have the ability to experiment. So this is the major finding, because people very often forget, they think, oh yeah, Google's so great. Yeah, Google has a great, huge research department. But last time I checked, they also build a lot of AI and a lot of models. Seems only like 5% of the stuff that works in research actually qualifies for production as well. And of course, but these 5%, they are just like really, they scale well, they bring a lot of extra value, and very often people don't get it. You cannot just like, oh, I need a prediction model for that, and of course it will work, because it's not software that works. We are still in an exploratory space. We can bring extra value and insight, but we cannot guarantee we will build a functional model for this or that, or like something specific. So we need to have flexibility, and basically every project, people throw us ideas, we would like to accomplish that, and we say, oh, we're very sorry, like especially language processing is my favorites, because like people, okay, we want a knowledge graph. Oh, you're sorry, your data set is not, it's not large enough. There's no knowledge graph actually building. We just have like trivial stuff there. But I think the important thing is to make new suggestions and start a new experiment. What about looking into entities? What looking into clustering your documents, because there's tons of documents, and you or like looking into key clauses in contracts, for example. Like there could be penalties with dates and stuff, and it's just like stuck there because there's a lot of data just like in text documents or contracts hidden, which they're not in any database. Nobody's really monitoring them, and especially, for example, in the building industry, this can become quite expensive if you miss deadlines or stuff. So, of course, so the key people have to learn, and this is something quite new. If you're just like corporate and you buy things and you buy software, no, you don't buy software. You just sign up the budget. Other people buying software. So. With your company, you have to really say, okay, we have to experiment to bring the extra value to the table and making AI happen. So this brings me already to the end of this talk. So basically, these are key pillars of ingredients of innovations, not all of them. But basically, we have to buy it. You cannot buy it, you have to build it. And if you like this talk, or if you're around, if you know friends, of course, I'm also looking for new team members. So, and just like, this is my LinkedIn, just DM me directly if you're interested. I also like to work with freelancers, but looking at many clients, I always think this is not how I ever will become a Königsweg company. So yes, I killed HR and we're doing it ourselves anymore again, because I know best who I need for my team, for example. So it is always like seeing anti-patterns can also help you to improve yourself as a company. So I hope you enjoyed this talk, and yeah, then happy to answer questions.
I wonder what you think of things like wordly mapping as a way to give some structure to this kind of what's innovation versus what's kind of off the shelf, that kind of thing.
Oh yeah, of course. It's always important to do an analysis like very often, proprietary software can be still the better choice, especially if you look at small and middle-sized enterprises. They are sometimes, they're world market leaders. They're like, in Germany, they're called hidden champions. But they are sometimes really remote, and there's basically, it won't be possible to really recruit talent. So there basically are two options. You go to a bigger city and build a lab and outsource an office there, or you go for, if you don't have the people to do all the fancy stuff, you basically have to settle for some good proprietary system. And sometimes there are also good solutions to solve, to address the problem. So I think my belief is like, not everything has to be open source. Of course, everything should be open source, but sometimes, like, I think that the right mix is the right answer, because we don't need to reinvent the wheel for everything.
Hello. I was looking on your portfolio, and I've seen that you have companies from multiple verticals. And I was wondering if you can give us some examples of successful AI projects. And also, what about SME? Do you see also the same drive on adopting AI?
I didn't hear it quite well.
So the other question was about SMBs.
Yeah.
Do you see also them adopting AI as enterprise or?
Yeah, like it's a mixture. Like it's always like there's like large enterprises, like companies everybody knows are all around the world, and like companies you've never heard of. Like and they, of course, they have like different rhythms, they have different structures, just like from depending on their size and culture. Was that your question, or do we do different approaches there? Or
the first question was about some examples from your portfolio, because I've seen that you have
yes,
different verticals.
Like one is, of course, we go there and help in ongoing projects to establish platforms, like team up with employees there, like do in terms of like, okay, what's a good architecture, where should you move, or which technologies in open source are suitable for you, what do you need to address in which order, help people, like, because there's also like many people migrating from other programming languages, like help them, okay, migrate to Python or not. This is not always working. Sometimes people just leave because like there's jobs in every programming language available at large. This is one, like ongoing, like helping long-term strategy, building new platforms, also sometimes like splitting like the platforms they have built themselves in the past, reinvent a new one, outsource some stuff to the cloud. Then there's other, of course, we do also do offsites projects where we basically, for example, say, okay, there's like, for example, like one example is OEM, people who build cars in southern Germany. In the luxury segment, they had like a large corpus of research data, like all their research of like 30 years. And they said, oh no, we cannot read it, search is not good enough, what can we do with natural language processing? And this is something, okay, let's help you to explore it. So we built for them, with open source, a tool they can inspect the data. And we, of course, we qualified. For example, the knowledge graph example was there because we would like to have a knowledge graph. Sorry, it's not working. Of course, we can get data outside, but this is not addressing your problem because you don't need. We're not rebuilding something to explain the world. We have to address stuff just in your corpus. But then we said, okay, you can have summaries. We can have clustering worked really well, and extracting entities from the corpus. And this gave them a completely new perspective. For example, there, it was more interesting, what have we done on research, for example, on batteries in the past? And then you basically have everything related to batteries, and then sometimes also like niche research, which was forgotten, because for them it brings a lot of extra value, because think about it, you do research, and you do research with material and a lot of manpower trying things out, and this can easily cost millions and a lot of work time, and so for them it's a real value to say, oh no, we've done this before, like 15 years ago, and we can really build on these results, or just realize, okay, no, we don't, or like basically changed the plan and said, okay, we don't really believe anymore, we should follow along with this approach. This is another example. So, yeah, so it's...
Any more questions? Alex, I had a question for
Yeah,
you. Right?
sure.
So I know you brought this thing about retros.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I've seen I've seen that Agile was set up as a process or methodology to reduce risk or improve repeatability, right? But it seems to be a religion, and people seem to get lost. So people seem to
No,
so
I
what are
think-
your thoughts on that?
No, my thoughts is actually we need to collect data and have a look on what's happening in a larger perspective, because like thinking in like cycles of 3 weeks is just like wrong. So so basically you also have to look really back. What was the situation half a year ago? What is the situation now? And then think about it. So sometimes I really wish sometimes the retro would just like skip, because there's nothing to say. Everybody's just like happy but yeah, it's just like I think it's very difficult, because like of course Agile and Scrum is all about rituals and keeping like the rhythm and everything, but yeah, if there's nothing to improve, so what should we do? I mean, we should just like, hey, let's decide, let's skip the retro. There's nothing to do, because we also, there's a larger team of like 10 people, 10, 15 people sometimes. Just think, there's like 2-hour retro, this is like 30 hours. This is like, that's multiple work days we just throw in, just like spending time with each other. And there's other things to do most of the time, so nobody's bored anyway. So yeah, so I think we have to be critical and open, and also I'm addressing these things openly. I think we don't really need this. We have it. So and what the other thing I learned actually is, because I don't know about you, but I always had like the impression like engineers, software developers, we tend to overthink and over-optimize, but I had to realize basically everybody else is doing it as well. Like I was quite surprised. If there's no problem, people look for problem. Everybody just, of course, tries to bring extra value, which is great. I mean, for me it's important. I'm not complaining of the persons there, because everybody's like really engaged and trying to do their job, but sometimes it's just like good to do. The better thing is just to say no. There's nothing to do. It's great, but it's, of course, you have nothing to report to somebody else.
A follow-on question. So have you ever seen velocity measured
yes.
in the teams?
Yeah, it's a very difficult question, actually, because the truth is there's lack of statistical knowledge involved, and there's like velocities measured, and actually, if you look at, there's too many data points missing, because there's like, okay, you always have like, I think velocity and everything is a good estimate, yeah, and I think it's a good thing to do, but sometimes people try to dig too deep into data and just like, no, sorry, people were like sick, this is not being accounted for, so basically you need like full surveillance, who's working when, what, on which project, who was sick, when, and there's like so much data missing, and it's just like, yeah, you just have to accept it. It's like, okay, I think we're on the right track, it's a good estimate, but that's it, and that's all good, but sometimes people try to find things which are just not there, and also, especially data scientists, if you look at the data scientists in the team calls, you see they roll their eyes, because of course, like, statistically, this is not solid at all, but it's, yeah, so, but I'm trying to help, also like to address, like in one-on-one conversations, I'm also addressing this. I mean, this is my job also to put the finger somewhere, okay, this is something you should consider, yeah, so, because everybody's trying to contribute, so it's not a bad thing per se.
So you said you don't do retros.
What?
You said you don't do retros in your teams.
Retros? No, yeah, we do, but
okay.
basically not it's not a self-purpose. So if we see, okay, there's nothing to address, then just like stop it, and then it's fine. Of course, retros are important, but if you like think about retros every 3 weeks, in some teams they are just like, okay, we're happy, we're moving on, everything's fine, just skip it. So that's, I think, and this is not basically built in the process, and yeah, or do other things in retros, like team building, have a coffee, chat about everything else, but not try to find problems. This is where no problems are.
Are we okay on time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, okay, in the back of that.
Yeah.
So, okay, less retros. But what about the rest of Scrum or Agile? How closely, Scrum and Agile, how closely do you work within those frameworks? Like, what do you do? How do you do projects?
Like very many of our clients, they work like that, and of course we integrate into teams. But my job is also to observe and to give feedback, and of course also I talk to people there, working there, and they say, okay, there is nothing really to discuss. Yeah, especially if you try to look into numbers which are not solid. Yeah, so and don't get me wrong. I think this is a very good process, working Agile, working Scrum like this, but it should be not dogmatic by some rituals are like just like, okay, we have to do this, and yeah, and basically, let's be adults and just like skip if everything's fine. And I think that's really easy to graph. It's the team has something to address of, it's just throwing like tiny things.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I have this quest to try and figure out how to marry Agile and data science, because obviously data science doesn't go very well with Agile in 2-week sprints. So I was wondering, what is your experience?
2 weeks, I think, 2 weeks is for the, now. I think like 3-week sprints, it should be at least. And of course, because I agree, very much in data science, it's really hard. Like you cannot basically say, okay, your results have to, the user story and your data science results have to be ready in like 3 weeks. I mean, like, we're working on experiments, as I explained. It's experiments, and sometimes we have early results, sometimes we have results in time, but very often there are results, but to validate the results, this needs time. And this, I agree, is not a good fit to throw it like into these like 3 weeks blocks, especially sometimes there's also like a feedback loop. How many user stories have been moved? It has to be explained why. So it's not just, okay, no, you didn't finish, okay, let's continue on the next sprint. Startups can do that, but like especially regulated companies, they sometimes have to even report back or like document why this has moved, because the framework is built. There's something essential has to be fixed. So something like, okay, we cannot trade, we cannot send stuff. Of course, this is like the background, but this is also like, so yeah. So sometimes it's better off to do this and move this out of like exploratory data science stuff. We try to move out into like, okay, this is like an explanatory, like more like a story which is to investigate something, which has not like a defined delivery result. So it's just like investigate, and after 3 weeks you can just like give a report. Okay, these are the findings, this is like the status, and then just like if you have to continue, just do another story, and basically you have the full story split into multiple. That's another thing you can do, just like as a technical solution. The problem still stays the same, and the solution stays the same, and the time needed stays the same. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
No, I had a follow-on thing, right? So, Agile all started to sort of have repeatable processes and reduce the risk. But somehow it's become a religion, right? And it's been taken to the extreme. So, things like velocity, if you're in a prototyping world where it's, you don't have a steady state, it's not worth measuring velocity, right? Because it's, you're experimenting, you're changing. But yeah, somehow, these Agile experts come in and it's the same process. But the big picture is you reduce your risk of delivery, right?
Right. I think.
Okay.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
Alex.